I did not know central planning had taken root in Madison County, Alabama. Nor did I know that fast food chains were, bastions of woke ideology, whatever that's supposed to mean. But
we have our regular Madison City Council update segment. Tryston Gilbert is on the line, right, Adam?
That's right.
Tryston Gilbert is on the line. He is our resident Madison City Council watcher. Tryston, welcome back to the Valley Labor Report.
Good morning, gentlemen. I've got a lot to talk about today, so feel free to help me stay on track.
Yeah, good morning. Let's just jump into it.
All right, so you watch enough of these meetings, you start to notice some trends. So I'm mainly going to talk about three things today. There's a handful of political action groups in Madison to know about, to be aware of. There's a couple of locally relevant conspiracy theories. That's going to be either fun or horrible, depending on your mood. And then we'll talk a little bit about transparency and the decline and, I guess, resurgence of local news and whose job it is to get information out to the public.
Absolutely.
Before I get into it, I'll go ahead and knock out some headlines. Madison has set a date for the special election concerning what the form of government is going to be in the future. So that's going to be the vote between the council manager form of government and the current council mayor form of government. That's going to be Tuesday, May 9th, between 7 a.m., 7 p.m. at your usual polling places. So if you live in Madison, write it down, Tuesday, May 9th. There's going to be an Easter egg hunt on the 8th, if that's your thing. There's more information on the city website for that. And there are still some job postings available for the Police Citizens Advisory Board. That's the citizens board that has a say in how the police department does their thing. So if you have concerns about the way police are, which you probably do if you're paying any attention these days, districts 2, 4, and 6 are open for applications until April 12th.
Okay, thank you for that.
Awesome.
Yeah. Any comments before I move into the meat?
I just encourage people to take advantage of that committee and put their application in 100%.
Okay, so to start off with, there are 3 political action groups in Madison that show up and are represented at the council meetings. The first one is Vote Madison. They are a voter information and civic engagement focused group. They're the ones who are responsible for uploading a lot of the council streams to YouTube. So any clips that we show later, you can thank them for. They take a pretty neutral stance on vote on the various issues. They just want to get as many people engaged and information out as possible. That doesn't mean they're without enemies, as we'll see in the conspiracy theory section. Their stated values are promoting transparency and accessibility, filling resource gaps, fostering diversity, equity, and inclusion. Keep that one in mind for later. Transcending partisan polarization and encouraging dialogue free of divisive language. So pretty agreeable stuff there, right?
One would think.
Our second group of note, who we've talked about before, is Madison Forward. They were the ones who went and got the petition signatures for holding this vote to transition the government. They took that to the probate judge, and he's the one who issued the order to the city to hold the special election. They came out of a committee that the mayor designated in 2021 to address the city's growth and what the government could do to sort of handle that as it continued, because the city has grown just a huge amount in the last several years. Their website has some of that information. I lost the link for that at the moment, but it's something like over 100%. The city's just ballooned upward.
Wow.
And the judges that they talked to and got to order this election are Judge Barger and Judge Woodruff. I don't know anything about them. If that means anything to anybody else, that's great.
Barger is just some lore for everybody. He is the guy who back in 2018 or something, he allowed a lawsuit to go forward of this guy who is suing a former partner for her getting an abortion. And he allowed that to go through, despite being a probate judge, because he said that fetuses are humans, human life.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing, I guess. The third group I want to talk about is a little bit newer. They call themselves Don't Mess with Madison. They formed in January specifically to oppose the potential transition to the council manager form of government. I read one of their blogs where they were arguing that that losing the mayor's position would lose the equivalent of 4 votes in veto power. And I think there's an interesting discussion about that. It's the way they phrased it in their blog was that like we are losing the equivalent of 4 votes of veto power. I want to know who we is in that statement, and whether or not anybody thinks that if the veto is equivalent to 4 votes, does that make it more or less democratic? Does it balance power, or does it put a lot more power into one person's hands?
Right.
And despite being a grassroots supposedly organization, they tried to convince the council not to set a date to hold the special election. They seem to not trust their fellow city folks, citizens very well. And I believe they recently filed a lawsuit against Terry Johnson of Madison Forward, who we talked about a little bit last time I was here.
I wanted to issue a small correction from the show last week. Our city council watcher, Tryston Gilbert, issued a correction to last week's segment about the Madison City Council report. He misunderstood something that was said by public commenter Margie Daly. The group Don't Mess with Madison is not involved in a lawsuit. However, one of their supporters are, through Madison City Watchdogs. Appreciate that correction from a couple of listeners. Always open to feedback like that. If there's ever anything that you feel we have misstated or missed some context for, always feel free to leave us a voicemail or shoot us a text message throughout the week at 844-899-TVLR, 844-899-8857.
So I don't have a lot of nice things to say about them. I understand some of their voiced concerns. I do not trust their motivation, because a lot of the conspiracy theories we're about to get into are coming from their side of things. Do you have any questions, comments?
I don't.
Okay, well, I tried to provide some clips for some of the conspiracy theories that we're seeing floating around. I have a little bit of research info about those.
Yeah, you want to go ahead and play this one from Elizabeth?
Yeah, so she is the chief blogger for Don't Mess with Madison. So this should give you an insight into her philosophy.
Okay.
We don't want to own nothing and be happy. We want to own homes and we want to own businesses. And your mission should be to protect these freedoms. You should work hard to protect our rights to own property and to buy and sell and go places. Madison could be a place where its citizens are known for their innovation, where there are creative small businesses. And we don't need central planners to plan that. We need you to protect our freedom to do it ourselves. Sadly, what I see more and more are barriers. We have centralized planning and government-run economic development right here in Madison. You seem to be preferring big developers and big chain businesses. I live right by Town Madison, and I'm enjoying all the businesses, but as I looked at Kava, I was looking forward to Kava coming. I looked at their website to see when they're opening, and on it, it says they do unconscious bias training. So for all the big chains that are opening up here, you're actually restricting the opportunities of local people to have their conscience respected. It's promoting woke ideology, which is what the unconscious bias training means. If we have small businesses, we have freedom.
Wow. I did not know central planning had taken root in Madison County, Alabama. nor did I know that fast food chains were, bastions of woke ideology, whatever that's supposed to mean. But, yeah. Right. Interesting. So, okay. All right.
So best I can tell, the whole wokeism conspiracy theory is a repackaging of the cultural Marxism that you'll hear people like Jordan Peterson talk about,
Right.
which is itself a repackaging of international Bolshevism, which the Nazis used to kind of help consolidate power for their side. It's a lumping of all sorts of folks into a category of undesirables that keep these it keeps the believers from having to talk about who it is they're really against. They fabricate a straw man and make it seem like they're the ones under fire.
Right. And because the thing is, like, I'm sensitive to local government being, on the take, so to speak, of big businesses and, being overly generous to fast food chains and national franchises. Like, that's, so I hear what you're saying, that there's some voiced concerns from that crowd that may resonate with citizens, but it's wrapped in this bizarre conspiracy ideology.
Yeah, I think the thing to really understand about wokeism is that when people say woke or wokeism without a shred of irony or just a side eye, we'll talk about what the cynical deployment of quote unquote woke stuff, but there's a lot of irony whenever we use it, and a lot of not seriousness and trying to lift the veil and unobscure things, because we have a critique. She's talked about unconscious bias training, and we have a critique of these management-led quote unquote diversity trainings or whatever, and we've talked about it, and we've talked about it extensively, and a lot of it is really just to placate people's desire for justice without actually having to do anything. But whenever there's this real unironic use of the word woke or wokeism, and whenever they, sincerely attach that label to something like a McDonald's or a Cahaba's, right? It is kind of indicative of the seriousness with which you should take the rest of their statement, which is not very much.
Yeah, they treat it like it's some very militant thing, when in truth it's an incredibly watered down version for the corporations to make as little progress as possible in almost every case, right?
Right. Exactly.
So she also mentioned DEI, or diversity, equity, inclusion, in there. There was another commenter from senior citizen Bob Peters, who comes on to tell us what that really means.
Yeah, let's
if you got that one
from Bob.
Just wanted to point out that the reason the city manager effort came forward, I believe, was because of a group came, I Vote Madison. They had a concerted effort to bring forward the petitions for the city manager. Now, I Vote Madison claims to be nonpartisan. However, they want to have people on their board who are diversity, equity, and inclusion on the board. Diversity, equity, and inclusion tries to train the world that whites are racist, and this is simply untrue. Anyway, it's a very partisan effort, and while all people have the right to jobs and try out for jobs and work for jobs, it shouldn't be based on non-merit or skin color. Our jobs should be based on the quality of your resume, the quality of how hard you work.
I never heard diversity, equity, and inclusion used like as a noun. Like their board has some of those. Yeah. Well, I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that if you are deeply offended by the concept of diversity, that might be a reflection of something you have going on inside, deep in your heart or in your brain. Just a thought.
And, I don't really watch right-wing news sources, so I don't know when this started, but I feel like this is something they've latched onto because it's watered down corporate language that a lot of companies have adopted because it's the least amount of work for them. So you see this acronym DEI popping up in a lot of places, and to them that's a conspiracy. And Bob, in that clip, he was a bit confused. It was Madison Forward that created the petition for the city manager. It wasn't I Vote Madison.
Right.
So I don't. I don't know how where he's getting his information. I don't want to cast any aspersions there, but he was also one of the people most vocally against the medical marijuana bill back last fall, and his wife was chiming in with him on that too. She had a longer clip, but I know we're already out of time, or overtime, so I only play that if you want to.
Yeah, we weren't. I wasn't able to pull that one, but I did. I did listen to it, and she said, she mentioned her advocacy against marijuana, and she mentioned that the council doesn't know who they're dealing with, and that some of these people are members of the Democrat Socialists of America, and that's a very scary group, she says. So, I
wonder whose show they go on. It's a mystery.
Yeah, I don't know. Wouldn't know anything about that.
There were one last note of the conspiracy theories. There were a couple people talking about voting machine fraud. One of the frequent commenters loudly demanded a hand count in addition to the automatic count. And of course, the voting machine frauds conspiracy was started by Donald Trump during his bid to overturn the 2020 election. There's an ongoing lawsuit by, what's the company that makes those? Dominion. Dominion, yeah, against that lawyer who was saying all those crazy things. So that's here. It's always wonderful to learn that stuff is local and not just on the news.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So moving on to my last point, there have been a couple people on like both and every side of this issue, including the group that just wants transparency, asking the council to stream more of their meetings, their work sessions, not just the big public every other week council meetings. And the president, Renee Bartlett, had she was very frustrated by some of these. If you don't want to play her clips, that's fine. I think I could summarize her argument.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
She said that in the past, when she's been involved in local government for something like 15 years, there were always reporters from like Huntsville Times and other local papers and news stations in the room that were doing that work. And of course, that was before streaming. So they've never had any sort of meeting or anything to set up streaming. Of course, lacking strong external pressure, they're going to do things the way they've always done. Mm-hmm. So I guess the discussion there is whose job is it to get that information out to the public in a time when local journalism is sort of in decline? And is what we're doing here kind of a reversal of that? Well, what do you guys think?
That's definitely part of what we hope to do, but certainly, the ability that shows like ours would have to replicate, because she talked about in her clip, she was talking about hiring somebody or interviewing somebody and how somebody from the Huntsville Times would be there in the room, taking notes for an article, right? And that's, that's just something that we don't have capacity for, and there are, the Huntsville Times just stopped its print operation. And it is really, really, and then the people that are replacing them, like right-wing radio, right-wing radio is still doing very, very well. The revenue for just one of the conservative stations here is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars monthly, right? But they're not putting that into reporting. They're putting that into commentary and, salaries for the hosts and, it's just commentary. It's just shock jock stuff. There's no actual, reporting value there. And it's really sad.
Yeah, I think it would be excellent if the local government would set up a consistent streaming service. It would make the job of keyboard amateurs like me taking notes on some of this stuff a bit easier. But lacking that, I guess along with voting for your form of government on May 9th, if anybody out there has time to sit in on some work sessions and take notes, please, every little bit helps.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's so important for folks to get engaged in local government because of that lack of local journalism. Because I think that's true, what she's saying, that in the past you would have reporters in these kind of rooms and these kind of meetings, but those reporters aren't there anymore. And the reporters that still exist, by and large, are not even going to those kind of meetings. And if they did go to that kind of meeting, it would probably just be to republish the press release that the government put out themselves. Okay, so there is such a deficit with journalism, particularly at the local level. And at the local level, you can make more influence. If you show up to a school board meeting or a city council meeting or a county commission meeting and you don't normally show up, chances are you'll be noticed because there won't be that many more people in attendance who aren't required to be there for some reason or another. So there is some power among citizens at the local level if organized and harnessed, appropriately. But I think the work that you're doing is very important because it's critical that we monitor what's going on and we know what's going on, not just from the government, but also from our fellow citizens, as you pointed out, how, some of these really disturbing trends in right-wing media circulates all the way down, from DC and New York and the airwaves to little old Madison, Alabama. And you have people showing up to their city council meeting advocating for stuff that is based on nonsense that they heard on TV or saw on Facebook. And so, it's all the more important that regular, everyday people with half a brain do some coordination and some monitoring of what's happening at the local level.
Yep. Tryston, Madison City Council watcher, appreciate your time. Thanks.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much, Tryston.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.